Right, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Life After Extreme Weight Loss. My name is Brandon Schneider, and I'm your host for this limited podcast series. I am very excited about the next two episodes I have for you. Uh, I have joining me on these next two episodes a wonderful person full of a lot of knowledge, and I'm very excited that she felt comfortable sharing some of her own personal journey with me. Makenzie Keene is a dietitian and is somebody who has gone through her own struggles regarding her mental health surrounding her body image, and she actually felt comfortable enough detailing some of her own personal journey over the next two episodes that we have here. Mackenzie is somebody that I was introduced to through a mutual friend, and I'm just so grateful that she provided me her time and came in and talked with me for well over an hour on a wide range of subjects, but primarily regarding how to navigate weight loss and be mentally prepared to handle it. This is just such an important topic and one that I'm, again, very thrilled and grateful that she provided me her time and expertise on. So please enjoy the first of the next two episodes with my new friend, Mackenzie Keene.
My name's Makenzie. I'm a dietitian with a very long history of anorexia. So I kind of have both the personal experience with some of the food issues, but then I also have some of the professional information on it too.
When, if you want to answer, when did you realize that you had anorexia? I mean, do you remember when that happened and like how you felt when you were basically either told or when you discovered? I mean, how did that happen?
It feels like kind of a long timeline. And I think different people with anorexia might have something different to share. But I feel like the thoughts that kind of contributed to my disorder started when I was about 5. And then the behaviors started in about middle school. And then it kind of just fell off the deep end senior year of college. And when somebody had mentioned it to me, I was very in the dark over my behaviors because society really praises a lot of the stuff that I was doing.
Mhm.
So I was kind of it took a while to get to that level of awareness where I was like, oh, I do have a problem. Um, yeah, and then it's been about 7, 8 years kind of like waddling in the deep end on that.
So you are you're a dietitian. How
Hmm.
did you get into that field? Was there something that prompted you to decide that this is what I want to do with my life?
Yeah, I think it's pretty multifactorial. Um, what I like about food is that it connects a lot of different areas of interest for me. So there's like the cultural aspect of it, there's a social aspect of food, environmental aspects, sustainability.
Mhm.
It gets into like health disparities. So it really kind of combines a lot of areas of interest into one. But I also think my eating disorder probably also played a role in me seeking out that field. Just like when you hear of therapists going into like therapy school to kind of resolve some of their own like inner turmoil, a lot of the dietitian profession has had an eating disorder in the past.
Mhm.
I don't know the statistics on it, but I want to say about 50% is a number that I've heard before. But I've also heard numbers that are a little bit higher than that too.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think some of the driving force is probably my eating disorder, but I do have a genuine interest outside of that too.
What would you so if someone told you if I
Yeah.
told you from for like a 4 month period, I just all they did was go to the gym. I took four
Hmm.
total rest days off. What would be your reaction as somebody who has um I know because
Hmm.
looking back at our message, like you said, you would never advocate for like weight loss.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what would you advocate for?
I think my reaction would initially be, I am so sorry society has done this to you and kind of all of us. I think we're kind of victims in a lot of ways to just what's promoted as like normal behavior. Um, I would tell people seeking weight loss that or seeking like, how do I lose weight? I think it's the wrong question. I think people need to ask themselves what their definition of health is and um, trying to think. Yeah, I think people need to ask themselves what their definition of health is and how they create a healthy relationship with their body,
Mhm.
exercise, food, and their goals.
That I would agree with. That
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with. If I were to tell you that for a 3-week period of of that whole journey, I was deep into caloric deficits.
Mhm.
What would that tell me? And let me. I guess I'll go even further. There's a 2 or 3 week period I was on phentermine because my doctor prescribed because I was so overweight. I was based. I mean, clinically obese, and
Mhm.
he really wanted me to have something to help me. I mean, I guess I've gone back and forth. First of all, on the whole maybe ethical value of phentermine. Um, I understand why he did it because I had tried before so many times and failed. And I feel like he really wanted me to see the numbers come off.
Mhm.
And then hopefully that would allow me to stick with it. And it did. But of course, I mean, I now, there's a part of my mind's like, well, did I stick with it because I was on a drug that was designed to tell my brain I'm not hungry, if I might be hungry, and so I'm just not even thinking about it, but that's a whole other thing.
Mhm.
So while on phentermine, routinely for throughout a 3-week period, burning 3,500 to 4,000 calories, but only taking in 11 to 1,200.
I'm saying it has eating disorder written all over it.
Okay.
And
Now that's not how I am now, obviously.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I think the question that I'd like to ask like your doctor is why um I guess do you feel like your doctor kind of promoted that at all?
Looking back, I don't
Okay.
because there had been. I mean, he'd been my doctor since I was a child,
Mhm.
and so now this was in 2018. Um, I'd started some dietary changes, and they worked a little bit, but I was starting to backslide a bit again. And so I talked to him about that. I do want to do this, and of course, it had been probably the 10th, 15th time in my life I talked to him about it, and I was at that time 32, going to be 33, and so I that's why I feel like he was like, if you see that it's consistent, you're not just, oh, you lost 3 pounds here, but you gained four the next day, or you're feeling bad about yourself. If you see a consistent decline, it should help you. Um, Now I don't know his background as far as the nutritional side of it, other than he told me it's like a low grade amphetamine basically, and that it's not habit forming, but I can only be on it 3 months or until I achieve a certain body mass index level, whichever came first, basically. Which was the 3 months. 'Cause I was so overweight. The 3 months kicked in. He's like, you can't be on it anymore. That's it. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It does. Yeah. And what's really nice about healthcare kind of now versus way back when is that I think there's more of a focus on the team approach.
Mhm.
So doctors in general really only have about 3 hours of nutrition coursework that they have to take. And I don't even know if it's necessarily a requirement, but they're definitely not an expert when it comes to weight loss or like the dietary component of things. Um, so I definitely don't mean to like shame any doctors that either like promote that or don't know what they're doing there because obviously like we need a team when it comes to healthcare.
Mhm.
Um, so I think what is hard about the topic of weight is that it's not very cut and dry. There are just so many factors that contribute to weight status that have nothing to do with nutrition or exercise. So it's not that I'm saying that those don't contribute, but Mother Nature plays a really big role in how we look.
Mhm.
Um, One metaphor that I like is that if every plant were to get the exact same amount of water and sunlight, they would still be different shapes and sizes. And this is what we call body diversity. But the reality is, every plant has a different need for sunlight and water, and providing that is what we call self care. So I kind of think about that when it comes to bodies is that this like thin equals healthy, like it's really not a one size fits all type thing.
Mhm.
Um, so what I would have preferred is if your doctor got you set up with like a dietitian that was maybe aligned with like health at every size, maybe some therapy, whatever you felt like the underlying like cause was for weight status to address that. And there's a chance that there really isn't necessarily like an underlying cause other than like genetic factors. So When it comes to like my anorexia, for example, like a lot of the starving had to do with me coping with underlying like past trauma. When it comes to chronic overeating, sometimes people might run into the same issue where
Mhm.
there's maybe some like emotional stuff that they're coping with food. And food is meant to be very emotional. Like we've associated it with like from the beginning of our birth to a place of like love and belonging when we're like being breastfed or like nursing.
Mhm.
And so it's supposed to be an emotional thing, like when we eat with people and it's social.
We're not
Those are
supposed to emotionally beat ourselves up after a meal.
exactly no, it's yeah, it's supposed to be enjoyable. It's life sustaining. Food's a very positive thing to existence. There's so many good things that come with it. If somebody feels like they are using food to cope with like all their feelings, though, um, I kind of like to think of an emotional coping toolbox that they need to develop for navigating whatever situations that kind of come at play. But then also working through whatever like past trauma is kind of like going with that. So, for example, I had a client that um, she would sit in her mom had just passed, and she would sit in her mom's old chair, and she would just, like, eat, like, all this food that was, that reminded her of her mom, and so that was kind of her way of, like, grieving, was, like, the chronic overeating with foods that were comforting to her
Mhm.
that she shared some of a connection with, so that's just one example of, like, one thing that could contribute to, like, chronic overeating, but there's a lot more than that, so, I think this is where the focus on creating that very healthy relationship with food, with our bodies, with ourselves, with exercise can really make the biggest impact and like long sustained change
Mhm.
that meets whatever health goals that somebody's trying to meet, opposed to focusing on the weight status.
So if in your opinion,
Hmm.
and I will call you this
Okay.
because I'm not sure if you'd call yourself this. In this room,
Hmm.
you are an expert. I am not an expert. Um, so like I would if I would want to just I'm more just curious about what
Yeah.
you would have told me if I
Hmm.
had the foresight and the knowledge
Hmm.
to go to a dietitian in 2017. I mean,
Hmm.
so the whole genesis of all this, and I discussed it in the very first episode is kind
Hmm.
of a get to know me as the person who's hosting this, and then
Hmm.
therefore going to be talking to people. I was in a 9-year relationship with somebody. It ended kind of abruptly in July of 2017, and everything from that. I mean, she was right to end it. I mean, looking back on it, we were no longer happy with each other.
Hmm.
We were both probably emotionally miserable. I mean, I can look back now and realize I was. Um, hope for nothing the best for her with whatever she's decided to do. Um, if it wasn't for one reason, another one, several reasons would have ended it. She just accelerated it. And
Hmm.
looking back now in hindsight, it was a great thing to have happened because ultimately led me to my wife and our children and all that stuff. But I think it was a fear of being alone, weighing 350 pounds and clinically, just medically speaking,
Hmm.
being obese and unhappy with where I had to buy clothes and not really liking the options I had. I mean, those are all superficial things, but, and then just feeling like, really like a fish out of water when it came to, being around my younger brother or my older brother, who were both kind of naturally thinner
Hmm.
than I ever was. I mean, a whole lot of reasons, but that sort of I can look back. That was the start. Is just a fear of being alone and not ever having anybody. Do you think that drives? Obviously, that must drive people.
Yeah, that actually is probably a big root of like my eating disorder. So, um, totally relate entirely. So, when you say that you were feeling that way, was this when you were in a larger body or a thinner body or both?
Feeling like I was going to be alone.
Yeah.
Um, well, I guess I can only say when I was in a larger body because I mean I'm met my wife and we're happily married now. So
Yeah.
um, I guess even when I was losing it all, it was I wasn't meeting anybody, but I think I wasn't really ready yet. And so I wasn't necessarily trying as hard as I could to maybe re-enter the dating scene until I felt I had enough confidence in myself. But even that's now been shaken with what I've come to realize as a whole. the whole idea behind this was to do kind of, talk about the physical health side,
Mhm.
along with the mental health side. What I've discovered in my conversations is a lot more attention is being paid on the mental health side.
Mhm.
And so I'm now realizing, like, I felt happy because maybe I was going to the gym so much and all that dopamine was getting released, and I
Mhm.
had no other obligations to anybody but myself. and
Yeah, it's an escape.
and a lot of yeah, exactly, a lot of it was an escape. And then uh sort of start dating again. But then I meet my wife, and that becomes our relationship. It moves very fast in terms of, well, we knew each other
Mhm.
already, so it sort of accelerated some of it. But um now I'm now really, like, we're married, and so, like, I'm scared. I think there's a lot of me that's scared of regaining weight, like I have been for the last 3-4 months, as I've probably put on
Yeah.
from my lowest weight about 20 pounds now.
Mhm.
And it's a very scary thing for me to have to try to confront. And then
Mhm.
I realize, well, a lot of people probably go through this. Like,
Yeah.
how can they handle it? What are the tools that I need to be looking for
Right. What does weight gain signify to you?
that I've failed?
Okay.
um, I've told my wife and my younger brother, who's one of my closest friends.
Mhm.
My biggest fear was that I would lose all this weight and become another person who did it all and then regained it and then some. uh,
So a little bit of fear of failure.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, when COVID shut a lot of things down, I was going to the gym relatively regularly, like no longer like I was. I mean, like, I don't know if I'd
Mhm.
said it was like a 4 month period, whereas every day I took 4 total days off. One of them being my graduation day, I didn't go, my
Yeah.
undergrad day. And then COVID happens, and we stop going to the gym because we're not, we're told, well, all that stuff, it's scary to think about. And gyms for a period of
Mhm.
time were a huge hotspot.
Yeah.
And so, now we've got the membership back, and it's just hard to get back into that rhythm after almost a year and a half off.
Right.
And so my lowest point, if we're talking about just numbers on a scale, I'm, 20, almost 20 pounds up from that in a span of 3 months. And it messes with my mind, even though I
Yeah.
try not to get on the scale every day, and I don't. But then I mess up, and I do, and it pisses me off.
Yeah. Okay, so I know you said that you're scared of like gaining it back with the fear of failure, but what does being in a larger body like what negatively does that mean to you?
I associated with my entire life prior to, you know me turning prior to 2018. So,
Yeah.
just, you know not really fitting in my car very well. My stomach,
Okay.
reaches the steering wheel. Having to special order clothes. And thing is, there's nothing. I don't look back and, like, hate myself necessarily. It's like,
Mhm.
I it just almost feels like I'm shaming people like that, and I'm not trying to, because
Right.
I was there. I just don't want to be there again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally get that with my like anorexia stuff. Even though like I would never judge somebody's worth or like value in life based off of their body shape and size, somehow I always feel like I have kind of a different expectation for myself where it's like, okay, but I also just feel safer with my current shape
Mhm.
and don't want to gain any more. Um, so yeah, sometimes like I mean I get it.
What would have been your advice to me if I'd come to you and said, Mackenzie, I'm on week 3 now, and
Mhm.
I'm burning 4,000 calories a day because I'm going to the gym sometimes twice a day because I've,
Yeah.
got nothing else to do. Um, and I'm only taking 1,100 or 1,200 calories because I'm so singularly focused on believing that my worth is tied up
Mhm.
in not being 300 pounds anymore, 350
Mhm.
pounds anymore.
I would say, eating disorder treatment.
Okay.
Um, so just out of curiosity, when you were in a larger body, was there any particular like behavior or thought that you felt contributed to like the weight status?
I don't I don't believe so.
Okay.
I just ate what I want. I I used to tell my younger brother, much to his chagrin, I guess is the only word I can think of. Because it wasn't. I had many a couple friends who wanted me to try to at least just be healthier. It wasn't necessarily about losing weight, just be healthier.
Mhm.
Because heart disease runs in my family. My parents
Gotcha.
both have had heart attacks, and my dad's a diabetic.
Mhm.
Um, which I mean, shockingly enough, I didn't, it wasn't something that had developed, as an adult for me. So I didn't develop it.
Mhm.
And I mean, I might, I guess, still, since it's in my gene pool apparently.
Yeah.
Um, but I used to tell him like I eat what I eat, I drink what I drink, and I'll die how I'll die. And it seems morbid to look back on it, but
No.
he really hated me saying that because he's like, well, he's like, you don't have to live that way.
The reality is nobody's morally obligated to live their life any certain way.
Hmm.
So our society kind of like pushes like the health, like they kind of have it on like a hierarchy, so to speak, where it's like here's the pedestal, like you have to be healthy. Nobody has to choose certain foods. Nobody has to live their life a certain way. Nobody has to be here like the world's your oyster. It gets to be what you want it to be.
Hmm.
So if you enjoy living that way, then that's that person's right.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Life After Extreme Weight Loss, hosted by Brandon Schneider and produced by Brandon Schneider with help from the Elite School of Communication. If you need help navigating mental health, reach out to Counseling and Prevention Services or your local healthcare professional.